Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. Those interviews are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to competitive teams, racers, rock crawlers, business owners, employees, media, and private park owners, men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active and off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Levi Shirley. Levi is a young man, still a young man in my eyes. Got started in rock racing with XRRA and Mo Rock. Never did any of the extreme rock crawling, at least with us, with We Rock, but may have done something at Hannibal or something, but we'll get into all that. Now he races Ultra 4, is a family man with kids, a great wife, and resides, I think, still in Dodge City, Kansas. So Levi, thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your life and history with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So happy that you asked me to be here. Happy to tell a little bit of my story here, and I'll try not to forget about, to talk about too much. And yeah, Rich, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, remember, you can never talk too much because I do have this thing called the edit button. And, if you start to wander on in conversations, don't worry about it because it's all interesting. So let's get started. And the first question I'm going to ask you, and I think I know the answer to this, but where were you born and raised?
Yeah, so I was born in Dodge City, Kansas, and still live here, active resident here. Went to kindergarten, high school, and even college, right here in Dodge City, Kansas. So kind of a not fitting place for somebody that loves rock sports to live, but yeah, it's a great community to be in, great place to live and raise a family.
Yeah, I've been out to your old house and to your parents' place, and we really love it there, especially when the wind is blowing in the right direction. Anybody that doesn't know, Dodge City is really, they have meat packing houses there or processing and lots of cattle yards.
Yeah, we have, there's some figure like that within about a 50-mile radius of Dodge City, Kansas. We supply something like 75 or 80% of the beef to the world. So to put that in perspective, just in Dodge City, Kansas, there are 2 packing houses that kill about 6,000 head of cow a day a piece. So just in Dodge City, Kansas, there's 12,000 head that get processed per day. And then there's 2 more packing plants about 40 to 50 miles to the west of us that do the same numbers. So chances are, if you've had a steak, it's from my area. It's something we're pretty proud of. and our whole industry and all of our majority of our lives revolve around something to do with cattle.
Right. What amazed me is how clean the community is. We travel quite a bit, and we're in a lot of different towns and cities and driving through, and we see cities that just look like they're just windblown and the world has passed them by. At one time they may have been thriving, but Dodge City is still thriving.
Yeah, absolutely it is. We do a good job. The community stays, relatively clean. Of course, no matter where you're at, you're going to have riffraff and a lot of stuff, behind closed doors. But for the most part, it's an amazing place. We have a very large Hispanic culture here that not a lot of people realize. That my graduating class was about 75% Hispanic, and as far as the community itself is anywhere from 75 to 80% Hispanic as well, out of about 30,000 people that reside in Dodge City, Kansas. So definitely unique, and man, I would not have it any other way. That's
awesome. So let's talk about those early years in school. What was school like for you?
School was tough. It was filled full of me just interested in what my dad was doing in the shop, and not so much what was going on in the books or necessarily like with school sports. So school was pretty tough for me to get through, honestly. I'd like to say I was a CB student. I was not a 4.0 GPA kind of guy. It just kind of struck me as one of those things I had to get through in order to do what I needed to do, or wanted to do, I should say.
Right.
So yeah, I was not a real heavy into academics by any means. Grew up again just wanting to do everything my dad was doing, which was including racing circle track, or with in the rock sports as well, and that's all I was interested in. Ride my dirt bike. Just I never grew up with any sort of video games. Never had a video game console. I was outside or in the shop or just trying to do whatever my dad was doing, which was a very cool, kind of childhood, if you will. School sports, grew up, trying to kind of fit in once I got to the, kind of the middle school puberty kind of age, realizing kind of what the girls liked. Tried playing football, which I played, 7th, 8th grade year, which was my first experience with that. Growing up, because I was not a big kid. I'm still not a big guy by any means. I remember my 8th grade year signing up for football, having our weigh-ins, and I weighed 99 pounds my 8th grade year, and they fudged it to the triple digits, to the 100 mark, just to make the roster look a little bit better, So, so I played that until my sophomore year, and didn't really get along with the coach by any means, and discovered wrestling as a sport sophomore, junior year. And man, that's a sport that I wish I would have continued in, or not continued in, but would have started earlier. Because I learned, from an early age with racing, something that I related to wrestling was that it was the effort that you put in is the what you were going to get in results, essentially. So I saw it more as an individual based sport, not one that had politics in it. And it directly related to racing. So I took off with that, and I wasn't the best by any means with that, but I sure enjoyed it. Wish I would have started earlier with it. And that kind of sums up my my sporting stuff.
Right. I understand the whole individual as opposed to team. I think team sports are absolutely fantastic for kids just because of the socialization and, learning to work within a hierarchy, you might say. But I always excelled at individual sports, whether it was swimming or skiing, water skiing, snow skiing. It was, it, I didn't have, it became just me. I didn't have to rely on the person next to me to do something. And I think that knowing that I had to rely on myself made a big difference.
Absolutely. There's zero politics involved. It doesn't matter if you have if you keep referencing football. It doesn't matter if one team member is weaker than you. It's literally how much you put in is what you get out. And I think that directly correlates to just life.
Right.
And if anybody was out there listening that had young kids, I would highly suggest them to start their kids in wrestling. If racing isn't something that they might not have the means or even want to get into, man, those individual sports are key.
Yeah, I agree. So then that also related into probably, like you said, being more of a CB student. So classes went pretty much just standard education. Did your school system have shop classes?
I went to a private Catholic school
Okay.
when I was kindergarten to 8th grade. Freshman year was my first year as in public schooling. We got to take classes like computer-aided design and so forth. But for the most part, it was just your standard stuff. The high school really lacked a lot of big shop classes. I never got to take mechanics. I took welding, which I loved. This first opportunity that I got, I took welding. And I want to say I actually got like a B in welding. So it wasn't even one that was I wasn't even an A student at welding. So yeah, I loved lifting weights. But I just really liked the shop side of things, but Dodge City did not offer a lot of those.
Okay. And your dad did some rodeo, like team roping or cutting horses or something like that. I think it was team roping, was it?
Yeah, so Dad did team roping growing up.
Did you ever get into that?
No, I never did. I just never really took a lot of. I just didn't really like it too much, to be honest with you.
Okay.
They didn't push me towards it. My grandpa also did a lot of team roping, and my dad still does team roping today. But it wasn't something that I was ever really interested in, to be honest with you, Rich. Just I loved motors for good reason, I guess, because I didn't have to wake up every morning and feed them.
Yeah, I know your mom's doing that. She's raising cattle.
Yeah, which I'm still, I'm pretty heavily involved in as well.
Okay.
But we call ourselves recreational ranchers because it's not something that we absolutely have to do to put food on the table by any means. It's more of a hobby, but every year it gets a little bigger and bigger.
So then, with spending a lot of time with your dad, you spent a lot of time at the shop, and was it like after school, head right to the shop type thing?
Yeah, literally. School got out at 3 o'clock, 3:15, 3:30 at the shop, either doing homework down there or diving into helping with whatever my dad, put me on, which, come to realize that a lot of times they were just busy tasks. He might have made it seem like, this had to get done or whatever, but in all actuality, they were just busy tasks, which I can see now that I am a father myself. that those busy tasks are important because they build character.
True. Very true. And what was, how did you get, I guess it's how you got involved with off-road was, of course, because of your dad. How did that, what was he doing? What was the earliest thing that he was doing besides, was it circle track?
Yeah, he did a lot of stock car racing locally. And yeah, just something he kind of goofed around with. He didn't really take it too awfully serious. I mean, we were there every weekend, having fun with it. I always asked, and Dad, he by any means was not a front runner when it comes to circle track stuff. He didn't work that hard at it because, of course, he had a life. He had to take care of the business. He had to take care of the kids, and he just it was kind of probably a blow off steam and something for him to kind of relate to with his buddies and stuff. So he was not a front runner by any means at all.
Okay.
We I always ask Dad, like, Dad, why don't you spend more money, or why aren't you the front guy? He said, I don't want to get into that. So he said, those guys have to work on their stuff all the time. And I was like, he's like, literally. I'm like, now hindsight, it's all I do is work on race cars, it seems like. I'm like, man, circle track would seem like a walk in the park compared to the stuff that I'm doing now.
Really? That's true. I can see that. So then your dad must have been into off-road, and that's what got you there. When you were growing up, was it bicycles, motorcycles, ATVs? What was your first?
All of the above. My dad came home one day with a 1987, I want to say, maybe a 6, ATC 70.
Oh, nice.
3-wheeler. And I remember pushing that thing more than actually getting to ride it, because it would break down the road, and I'd have to push it home and figure it out, which transferred into dirt bikes at a young age. And I rode dirt bikes. That was my jam. That was my thing for a lot of years. On 10-10 of 10, I went over the handlebars at a hare scramble racing motorcycles. And I realized that at a young age that there's an old saying out there called "with age comes a cage."
Yep.
And got into side-by-sides from there.
Okay. Well, it's good that they had side-by-sides available.
Yeah, exactly. We were very, very lucky to have those.
There was no such thing as that when I was growing up. It was motorcycles or bicycles.
And the things that did have cages, such as a Honda Odyssey as well, I'm sure, they didn't have suspension. So
right.
Your head might have been okay, but your back was screwed.
Very true. Very true. So then, really kind of social there. Lots of friends, local friends, and everything.
Yeah, lots of local friends. Yeah, here. I all my friends still. I wasn't overly social in high school, as far as like connecting with class or anything like that. Classmates, but I kind of went from town to town, and us kids that were all kind of into similar things, motorsports or whatever. We kind of all stuck together, and from all different ages and grades, and yeah, still have a bunch of friends that still reside here, and a lot of friends that moved away that are still really good friends that just went to bigger parts of the world to do other stuff. Cool.
And what was the after the ATC and motorcycles? You said you got into side by sides. And was that the beginning truly of the off-road four-wheel odyssey that you are in?
No, so before the side by sides, um, I did XRRA for about 2 years, two or 3 years,
Okay.
which was Extreme Rock Racing Association, which was my start per se. I obviously took to my dad and what he was doing. He started co-driving for a guy by the name of Mike McClure, which we all know. He races side by sides today. He was doing XRA, and I think Dad was to the point to where he wanted the control and not so much to be in the right seat, which is understandable.
Especially with Mike driving.
Especially with Mike driving. I remember my dad.
Hey, Mike, if you listen to this one, Mike, we love you.
That's right. Yeah, Mike. Hey, and by the way, thank you for bringing me diesel the other day when I ran out on the side of the road, Mike. Really appreciate you. But yeah, he decided he wanted to have more control, and so that was 2006, 2007. Dad bought his very first car, which was from Jimmy's 4x4, and it was the third car that they had ever made. And who knows what they're into now, probably in the couple hundred serial numbered cars that they've produced. Dad's was the third car. And so Dad got heavily into racing. He got the bug and got the bug big time when he was traveling all over the country with it. And I was right there by his side, going to every single race, if not begging to go to every single race, missing school to do it, of course, and also some organized sports. And they obviously saw my passion, and that they saw how family oriented that the rock racing community was, and still is. And they decided to get me involved in it. And I remember in 2008, I would have been a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
They bought me my very first rock racing car, which at that time it was a rock crawler. It was a single seat Diablo chassis from Schaefer's.
Yep, Mike Schaefer's. Yep,
Mike Schaefer's. That had been to a bunch of the We Rock stuff, and I'm sure you have personally seen and touched that car that I started racing. I distinctly remember my parents asking me about this car and like, hey, what do you think of this car? I'm like, I like it. Well, they want $12,000 for it, and it was located in Washington. I want to say they found it on Pirate 4x4. Like, oh, dude, that Dad, Mom, like, I appreciate it. That's too much money. Okay. And then a couple weeks later, it showed up on a transport truck. And I remember them saying they spent, I think, between taxes and transport and all that, it was around $13,000 for this vehicle. And I remember, like, at that point going like, oh, this is a huge responsibility now. I have, $13,000 on a vehicle. Are you kidding me? Like, this is, I now have to put my heart and soul into this to succeed, because that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for my parents. Right. And I remember I remember talking to my mom about this a few years ago, and she was like, that was one of the most nerve-wracking things, is spending that money, that $13,000 on a car, not knowing if you were going to succeed or fail with it.
Or even continue to like it. Yes.
And continue to like it and stuff. And like she said, your dad and I got in a lot of arguments about it. And end of the day, we decided to go for it. And it's funny to look back at that now and thinking that was a very pivotal point in what I'm doing today. And I'm very thankful for that. Because yeah, man, I don't know if I'd have the guts to spend that money on my kid. And it's funny to also to look back at that $13,000 going, you bought a whole car for that much money?
Yeah. Yeah. You can't even buy a front end, an axle.
No, that's not. You can't even. Yeah, you can't even buy a motor, or anything nowadays.
Oh man, you got the car. I know that your parents required basically, or at least you felt you had to work for it, and I know you put a lot of time in at the shop.
Yeah, a whole lot of time with it. Funny, funny story about that car's first race and my first race as a driver. I It was in Gray Rock, Alabama,
Outside of Birmingham, yep.
and outside Birmingham. We were at an off-road park there, and I can't remember who I lined up to next to that day because XRRA racing. It was they changed over the years, but in that time it was um, one car per lane, two lanes racing side by side. You'd race one lane and then flop over and run the next lane, but you never were tire to tire contact. And that was that way for a long time until they later changed it to where one lane, duke it out, um, which was very cool. It was kind of the start of rock racing, essentially.
Right.
It was
Yes.
the start of rock racing. Back in those days. Anyways, I don't remember who I lined up to for my next to my very first race, but I remember carrying a lot of speed, too much speed going downhill. The car went airborne, caught the first lift going downhill, and it broke the upper panhard bar going to the chassis. And when you lose one link on a 3-link suspension setup, your axle is no longer going to stay in place. And I remember driving clear over my axle and rolling down the hill. And my very first run, my very first race ever, and crawling out of the car about 50 feet from the start line, looking up, my axle was about 20 feet up ahead of me, and my car was right there with me, of course, going, oh my gosh, that was my very first race ever, and I just destroyed the car. I'm not going to ever do this again. This is terrible. My parents are going to hate me and for this, and yeah, just having the worst feeling in the world. And it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. I felt for my parents. I felt for everybody involved. Luckily at that point I really didn't have sponsors, and I remember going back to the trailer and literally man, it gets me emotional now talking about seeing my dad crying because he knows that I have the potential, and that I just did that. It might have persuaded me to go a different direction, but yeah, so that was definitely one of those core memories that stick with you forever.
But you learned something, didn't you?
Oh, I absolutely did. I absolutely learned the brakes on the left and not to let that right foot do everything. But no, all seriousness, we went back to the shop. I fixed it myself. We ended up 4-link in the rear and putting ORIs on it and making it that much more competitive. So in the long run of things, we made a more competitive race car out of it. But yeah, it definitely a pivotal point.
And then after that car, how long did you have that car for?
I want to say I had the car for 2 years.
Okay.
After that car, I started racing that Jimmy's car. That was my dad's first car.
Okay.
And he got into a car called a Sniper Fab Works. They were out of Oklahoma at that time, racing those. And yeah, so I was racing the Cadillac that we called it for a year. And then from there, we transferred into building another car with Sniper Fab Works. That was actually a car that we raffled off for charity at that time. I had a company approach me about, they obviously saw I was young and enthusiastic, and they said, hey, we'll buy this car. We'll pay for this car for you if you let us own it. And then at the end of the year, you're going to sell raffle tickets for this car all year long. And at the end of the year, it's going to go to somebody. Somebody else is going to win this car, but all the proceeds are going to Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And so I raced that car for a year, raffled it off at the end of the year, and raised a bunch of money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And yeah, that was kind of my first dual shock, real kind of almost King of the Hammers, Dirt Riot car, if you will, that I had ever officially built.
Right, and that was a 2-seater, correct?
And that was it. That was a 2-seater car with a Liberty front clip on it.
Okay. And did you have somebody navigating for you at that point at XRRA, or was it all just you in the car by yourself?
It was always in the car by myself. I'm sorry, and I forgot a very pivotal car that I raced after that Sniper Fab work. After the Schaefer's Diablos, I had a moon buggy that was built by Rick Dermo that I raced for about 3 years.
Okay.
XRRA, and then when it came time to do the distance stuff was when I raced the Cadillac, the Jimmy's car. So short course, yeah.
Was Rick's car, was that he built the chassis, or was that a Campbell chassis that he built?
That was a Campbell chassis that he built.
Okay.
Apparently Campbell's had built it, left it up in the rafters of their shop. And he walked in one day down there in Gilbert and said, "What are you doing with that chassis?" "Don't know. I'd like to buy it." Bought it, took it home, and built a rock racer with it out of that.
Okay. And that was not that wasn't the independent car, because the independent car that he had was that was one that he did with Randy from Jimmy's. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. One of the first independent cars ever.
Right.
Between him and Shannon.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of his first cars.
Okay.
And I still own it today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still own that Campbell car today. It's tough. It has a 3-gallon fuel cell, and it doesn't have a lot of cooling, and it's just tough. And it's not really a rock crawler. It was built primarily for rock racing, and so yeah, there's not really a big market out there for it. So it has sat in my garage for the past 15 years.
Something to get one of your boys into if he has the interest.
Absolutely. He's already claimed it. So I don't think I'll have much choice.
There you go. Okay. So then you're racing the Sniper car. You get that one, gets donated, raffled off. I remember buying raffle tickets for that. And then you, which car was next?
After that was a car named Layla. And that was another Sniper Fabworks car. Decided to go bigger shocks on it, bigger motor, but very similar to the car we raffled off. And this one had a Jeep JK front end on it. Raced King of the Hammers and a lot of your series, the Dirt Riot series, with that next car. Raced that car for, I want to say, 3 years, pretty hard. And yeah, still actually, I would say I own that car, but I actually just sold that car here a couple weeks ago. Converted it to a Legends car, backing up a little bit, converted it to a Legends car, and raced the Everyman Challenge race at King of the Hammers for 3 years with it, and just recently sold it here a couple weeks ago to a guy in Montana. So it's going to Montana to race King of the Hammers here next year. So that car's still around and still kicking, but unfortunately I'm losing it, but it is going to a good home.
Good. And when did who was your first navigator?
My very first navigator was a guy named Kelly Halling out of Dodge City here. He was going to all the XRRA races. He was actually spotting for my dad and I at the XRRA races, before we even had 2-seat cars. And so it's kind of a natural transition to have him in the car with me and to have somebody that would kind of keep me, tamed.
Using the left pedal too?
Yeah, using the left pedal as well and keep me under wraps. So my very first co-driver was Kelly Halling.
Okay. And how long was Kelly your navigator?
He was my navigator. He did the XRRA stuff for 3-4 years, and then the navigator role for about another 2.
Okay.
And then after that, a guy by the name of Terry Madden, which I'm sure everybody knows, co-drove with me for a few years after that. And then after that Sniper Fab car, we decided in 2013 to go back to a single-seater. And I was back by myself in the car again.
Right. And the single-seater was the IFS and
Correct.
the Campbell car, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That was the Campbell car. Loretta is her name. I have to name all my cars. They all start with an L. So if you hear me referencing my cars by name, I'm sorry, just the way my mind works.
That's okay. Why L's?
My name starts with an L.
Okay.
I don't know. It just the very first car, that I win car, we named it Lently off of our slogan for that whole program called Relentlessly Driven. So in Relentless, we came up with Lently, and we were, matter of fact, Terry and I were sitting at the shop loading to go to one of your races, and we're like, we just had finished the car, and we're like, we absolutely have to name this. Well, might as well start with the L. So we opened up a baby naming book. It went in and counted down 81 names, and on the 81st name, 81 being my number, was Layla, and that stuck with that. And so from there, it's just always been L names. I don't know why.
Interesting. That's cool. A little history there. So the car that got raffled off, that didn't Terry end up buying that?
So basically what had happened to it is there was somebody online that bought a raffle ticket for $5. One $5 ticket. Called him up, said, hey, you won the car. Congrats. And actually, it wasn't even a call. It was an email saying, hey, you won the car. Congrats. And he replied with, awesome. This is amazing. But I don't know what I'm going to do with it because I'm currently actively deployed. So from there was a cash option to buy it from him. Yeah. So basically, Terry somehow purchased the car from him and wound up with it and raced for a little bit, and then it sold and actually went up to Topeka, Kansas now, and that's the last run-ins I've ever had with it, is knowing that it's back in Topeka, Kansas.
Okay, interesting. And what was it like that first season running XRRA and being the young kid out there against all these adults?
It was definitely. It was definitely interesting. I obviously really didn't have a big fear per se. And it's not something that I really thought about, was being the young kid. There was obviously a lot of media attention, kind of gravitating towards me because of my age. So that was a little weird to kind of get used to. It was the media side of things, but literally everybody there, I looked at them like they were my idols. I would study what they're doing. I'd look at their cars, and everybody was more than welcoming and inviting as far as that goes. But yeah, I would like to say, other than my dad, one of my biggest heroes of the day that we were racing with, that I just what was 100% about, was Shannon Campbell. Okay. And I think that was, he was everybody's hero, but that's somebody that I really gravitated towards. Was Shannon's style, Shannon's cleanliness as far as the way he did cars, how he manufactured stuff. So just everything about Shannon, I was about. And kind of a cool story from that is one day at an XRRA race in Colorado Springs, my dad, Shannon, we're sitting there talking, and Waylon Campbell, which is, I want to say he's 2 or 3 years younger than I am. We're all sitting around there, and I had brought my Schaefer's Diablo car there, and I asked Waylon, like, "Hey, do you want to drive my car?" And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." He would have been 10 or 11 years old at that time, and so he hopped in the driver's seat, and Shannon said, "Go drive my car." Told me that as a 14-year-old kid. "Go drive my car." And I'm like, "Oh, Shannon Campbell just told me to drive his car." Yeah, the race was already over. We were just, everybody's hanging around, hanging out. And I went and drove the car and was hitting the track pretty hard. And Shannon said, "I want you to hit this big gap jump." At this time, there was a big gap jump that a lot of people wrecked on. That was just kind of a cool deal there at the Ram Off-Road Park at Ray Vandel's park. He said, go jump that jump. Like, "Oh, no way. No, sir. No way. I'm not going to go jump this jump." He might have used some profanity and said, "Go hit that jump." Yeah. And anyways, so I went and did the jump, and he said, "Dude, that's awesome. Try doing this." And he kind of started to coach me a little bit more and more with driving that car. At the end of that, he said, "When's your next race?" I said, "Well, it's in Hannibal, Missouri, during whatever, in 2 weeks." He said, "Take my car home." What do you mean, Shannon? He said, take it home. I'm like, "What do you?" He's like, "I want you to race my car at the next race. Take it home, prep it. Just make sure it's prepped for me at the next race. So after you get done racing, you prep it and make sure everything's good and give it back to me in Cortez." "Oh, yes, sir." I'm not going to turn that down. I'm like, "Dad, are you sure this is okay?" He said, "Yeah, that's fine." And so I actually took that car, raced it, and had my very first win ever, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
As a 14, 15-year-old kid there in Hannibal, Missouri, winning my very first XRRA race, which obviously gained a lot of attention, a lot of momentum for my racing career from there. So, I mean, to have your idol give you a car and said, "Go drive it," I mean, especially at that young of a kid, is pretty amazing. So I'm still very thankful to Shannon for that, and I will forever be grateful for that opportunity.
That's pretty cool. That doesn't happen very often, especially the take it home, go race it, and then bring it back.
Yeah. Oh, and if you can imagine, I was nervous. I was beyond nervous as a kid. Like, "Oh, like, this car is perfect, and don't screw it up." And I want to say it was the car that he won King of the Hammers with for the very first time. It was that solid axle moon buggy that I remember the big story about him starting at the back of the pack and worked his way through the entire field and ended up winning the race, like in 2007 or 8.
Right.
So, yeah, that very iconic car. So didn't want to screw that one up, and luckily did not.
That's a pretty good story. That's awesome. I remember you coming out to Dirt Riot. Our format is very similar to what is run now at Ultra 4, but it's that multiple lap type thing. And we did that for a certain reason, and it was to hopefully train drivers to learn terrain and how to get faster going over the same terrain. Did you think that helped you at all?
100%, without a doubt. It was thanks to your association. It also taught endurance. Of course, not only going fast over the same terrain, but lap after lap after lap. It was, hey, you got to keep the car alive for those 3 hours. And I will largely attribute any success that I have had thanks to the Dirt Riot series, because it taught me endurance. And I don't care if you're the best whatever racer in the world, it's all about seat time. A lot of people depend on their cars too much to get them that win or whatever. or even a finish, but it's all about seat time. And that's what that series really, really, it was so good for me because it got me seat time. To where when I showed up and raced any other races, I could be successful because I had that seat time and I put the work in.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad we were able to provide that. That's what we wanted to do, was to create a training ground for people to be successful at races like KOH, where you had one shot at it. And, at that time, the races were 100 and some odd miles to 200 miles. Now they've gotten to be a lot longer than that, but of course, cars have gotten faster and better, and you drivers have gotten better. But it was to give everybody a chance when they went out there to go farther than 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the things we saw, is that people would spend $25,000-$30,000 to go race KOH, one race a year, and then have no success whatsoever. I mean, lucky if they made the first pit. And
right.
It got to be where, our drivers, the guys that raced at Dirt Riot, started to get to where we were getting a lot of good results at KOH. So we were always counting those and, putting it against the total numbers of vehicles out there and, that kind of thing, just to pat ourselves on the back, I guess. But, it just meant that, we were hopefully doing something right. So I'm glad to hear that. I can remember, I think we were, the Oklahoma, it was Buzzard Canyon, and I think it was the one where we had all the heavy rains the night before, and the river was flooded, and we had to change the course. We couldn't put the pits where we wanted them, and we had to change the start-finish line, and Lauren showed up, and he wasn't going to show up at first, and he was worried about the rain and the mud. Him and Clay Gilstrap and Lauren were complaining about racing, wanting to race, and I told him, go put your pink panties on and get your fire suits on. We're racing. And at the end of that race afterwards, Lauren came to me and said, "You know what? I can't outrun that kid anymore." And he was talking about you.
I distinctly remember that as well, because he was showing up pretty hot and heavy, chasing the Dirt Riot stuff as well.
Yep.
And I remember passing Lauren at some of those races, and yeah, I mean, he's obviously somebody that he's one of my peers, and I still look up to him today and what he does. So to have that comment from that guy, pretty cool.
Yeah, and you were racing back then against guys that were pretty damn competitive, even if they hadn't won a KOH yet. Guys like Derek West and Clay Gilstrap. There was guys out there that were really, really fast. Hell, your dad was fast on, at least at our courses.
Yeah, he was always fast at those. He is one of the guys that would get everything and then some out of those courses.
Yep.
He still is today. He just got tired of working on them, on the cars.
That, and he wanted to retire and fly more.
Yeah. Airplanes are a lot less work, I think. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, but when they break, it's easier just to pull off the side of the road.
Yeah, and I'd be lying if we didn't have some close encounters with that, because his flying has gotten a little bit more involved, of going from airport to airport to landing on sandbars and camping and landing planes that there's never even been vehicles on, kind of scenarios. So he's kind of figured out a way to combine off-roading and camping and overlanding. I call it overlanding for airplanes.
Yeah, that stuff, that short takeoff and landing. Yep. Mm-hmm. So then, what would you consider was your favorite race course outside of KOH? What was the favorite place for you to go race that you enjoyed the most? Whether it was because of the track or the people or whatever.
I would probably say my very favorite race and race track would be Glen Helen. I loved racing Glen Helen. as far as outside of King of the Hammers, because it took my motorcycle riding skill set and applied it to, the racing the cars, knowing how to enter the corners, how to keep stuff alive. And so I definitely have to say Glen Helen back in the day was one of my favorite racetracks. And oh my gosh, was it hard on stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say I have never heard a racer say that they enjoyed or loved Glen Helen for that simple fact.
I remember my dad and I showing up to Glen Helen after driving all day, all night, because it was about a 20-hour trip for us, and saying, this track was made for you. It's saying, and it kind of gave me that little bit of confidence to say, because he saw my driving style and he saw obviously where I succeeded, and we went out there, and I want to say very first time it was one of the deals we were doing really good till we weren't. But from then on, it was just every year we'd go back to Glen Helen. It would just be I'd get a little bit better. And that was probably my favorite track outside of King of the Hammers. After that, my favorite track would probably be the Copper Mines, Altus,
right,
Oklahoma. It was such a cool track, and it's really kind of where I cut my teeth, I'd say, more than anything, learning how to do endurance racing, because we had a bunch of races there, and it was close to us, and it was just a really, really cool racetrack. I was very grateful for Raymond Moody and his wife and that whole facility.
Right. There was nothing like the parties after the races at the Red Dog Saloon.
That's right. I may or may not have one time put a pit bike on top of the bar and did a burnout after a party, but that's all right.
Yep. I couldn't believe that we could get 9 miles of racetrack out there.
Yeah.
Because there was that big lake area out there that you couldn't really go around, or, it took up a lot of the property, those two lakes. And, then the compound area down in the middle, but we created that horseshoe shape that we were able to get 9 miles of racetrack out of with variations.
It was incredible. It was a lot of, I remember, they had hills, they had little kind of rock ravines, big long straights next to fence lines. But that tell you what, that's one place you never want it to get a quarter inch of rain, because then it turned into an absolute nightmare.
Yes. Oh yeah. The rain race we had there with, I think it was the first time that Bill Baird came out, but a bunch of guys ended up with, weren't able to finish the race because of the mud in their eyes. It was pretty gnarly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your family life. And, you're married, you get 2 kids. Talk about your wife.
Yeah. So, my lovely wife, Miranda, and I have been together for, let's see, it's 2022. We've been together 11 years, married for 6. Don't kick my butt if I get that wrong, Miranda. I think 6 or 7. I don't know. We have 2 beautiful little boys. We have Dawson, which is the oldest, and he'll turn 4 on Saturday here.
Oh, nice.
And we have Otto, which is our newest. He's fresh. He just turned 3 months old.
Okay.
So
I have to ask, because it was at somebody made mention of it. My son, Little Rich, was here for the last couple of days at my parents' house, and with his kids and Brandy, and we'd mentioned that you had another son, and the name was Otto, and we were all wondering, where did the name Otto come from? Because it's not something that's real common nowadays.
Yeah, so I wish I had a really cool story about that, but I don't. I think we just stumbled across the name Otto, and we really took to it, and it stuck. Obviously, we already had the name picked out before he was even born, so it wasn't one of those like spur of the moment things. But yeah, it's not an old family name. It's not a real common name like you were saying, but we like the way Otto Shirley sounded, and easy to spell, and yeah, just a really cool name. And I tell people that it wasn't a family name, but it is now.
Right. That's good. When I was growing up, my parents' insurance agent, and who was my first insurance agent for car insurance, was a State Farm guy, and his name was Otto Graff. And
That's cool.
yeah, it was. I'll never forget that autograph. It was,
we have came up with a million nicknames for Otto, since obviously having him. There is Automatic, that we call him. We call and his name's spelled OTTO,
right,
not AUTO. So I want to clear up any confusion that I'd named my kid AUTO. And we call him just a million different nicknames. It's kind of fun.
Cool. And you into a new house. I know that you had the house on the corner. Is it you in the same property, or you farther away now?
Yeah, kind of. We went into town whenever we were pregnant. My wife was pregnant with Otto. Our little farmhouse just wasn't gonna cut the mustard anymore. We kind of had to go and find a new home relatively quick. We've been talking about building a house for the past probably year or two before Otto was even in the picture, and we went as far as getting plans drawn and meeting with the contractors to kind of start the ball rolling so I could stay on my parents' property essentially. And with all these COVID prices, there was just no way I was ever going to afford to build at this point in time. So we decided to kind of let's go out there and see what's already built. And we came across a house in town and fell in love with it, and it's where we are today. We've been here since August and love it. It is a little bit of a transition moving from out of town into town, with neighbors and all that stuff, but luckily we love our neighbors. We love where we're at. We love the fact that our kids are going to have neighbor kids to run around the block with versus being a farm kid where you kind of got to create your own fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's how I grew up. Playing basketball on a gravel driveway by yourself. That was my childhood.
Right.
Versus, actually have neighbor kids to ride around with. So I wanted to give that to my kids. And so we ultimately decided that it was the better choice to hold on building and find something in town. Man, it's been awesome.
And did you guys go to school together?
No, we never did.
Okay.
She went to Cimarron High School, and I went to Dodge City High School. Met her at a friend's house after I had already graduated from high school. She was still a junior going into her senior year, and we started dating. And I dated her, the rest of the time, and she went off to college, and I didn't, but we still stayed together. And yeah, I should say I stayed here locally for college. She decided to go get a 4-year degree at Kansas State. So okay. I tell people I got the 4-year experience without ever having to pay for the 4-year experience.
There you go. Did you make a lot of trips to K then?
Yeah, absolutely. My truck pretty much knew the way. Friday night after school or work, from the trailer shop, it was headed east up to Manhattan, Kansas. And Yeah, I racked up a lot of miles doing that.
I have to say your wedding was beautiful, and your party, the reception afterwards, was one to remember there in the hangar and
Uh-huh.
shop area. And we kind of snuck in. Miranda knew we were coming. Nobody else did. Um, your dad actually saw a photo that I'd posted on the way up, and he's like, because we came from Texas, and he was like, I think they're coming. And so we showed up, and the look on your face was priceless. But what a what a great time with all the racers that were there, and we had our own little section of the hangar there, hanging out with all the racers. And I remember your dad kept wandering over, and your mom would like drag him back over, with everybody else. And finally, when all the rest of the family left and everything, you came over and said, "Oh my God, now I get to spend some time with my friends." It was awesome.
Yeah, I was so happy you guys showed up, and along with all my other racing family at that point, because I mean, it's safe to say I've spent more time with, you guys or my other racing, the actual other racers, than I have at home, really, with all my other friends and family at home. So you guys definitely are a critical part of my friend group and family, and I really really appreciated you being there, and to give people an idea of like how important racing is to my family and I, is my race car was actually in the middle or off to the side, but it was in the building for the reception. um, so which was pretty special to me, to actually have your race car, and it was very special for that my wife actually allowed it. But she knows the drill.
She knows that's a passion for you, is having that race life. So
Absolutely, and we always talk whenever we buy a car. It is a car that is essentially, as I have stated on this podcast already, with keeping that old Campbell moon buggy and actually just selling Layla, the Legends car. Is pretty much whenever I buy a car, it's for life, and it's a lifetime commitment or build,
kind
and
of like being married.
kind of like being married is you. Yeah, those cars become family pretty quick,
Especially when you name them.
especially when you name them. Uh-huh. It's kind of like naming a cow before it goes to the slaughterhouse. Unfortunately, is that you know what you're about to do to them every race.
Yeah, I don't know if I could name cows if I had cattle, because you know that it's going to end up on your plate someday. Go, wow, Joey was sure tasty, or whatever.
We do have our special cows that are named, and yes, they have wound up on our plate before. So we just try not to think about that.
Yeah, try not to think about it. So what's coming up in the future?
Yeah, so just more racing. Obviously my family is of utmost importance to my everyday life. What I'm paying the most attention to, what is I'm ultimately setting them up for success, and really digging down deep, to do that. I love racing. It's never going to stop racing. Never ever going to stop. If anything, just get a little bit busier. I don't know. But my goal for the years going forward is to kind of be cherry picking races, not just in, say, the Ultra 4 or King of the Hammers, venues. Is I like to go to other places and race, and try different stuff. So and that's where I feel like my sponsors and my marketing partners get the most out of, is when I go try new stuff. And yeah, I've been having a lot of fun doing that, and that is I'm going for the quality and not the quantity races side of things from here going forward. So I love my racing. I've been very heavily involved with Ford Motor Company up in Detroit, doing a bunch of their driver training, as well as far as the income side of things. And so I go to Detroit a lot. I go up to Southern California a lot, training their engineers and signing off on their engineers to be able to drive Ford Motor Company's property. And yeah, that's been a new kind of a new chapter in my life, is doing more of that stuff. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what puts food on the table.
And do you find that where the racing is such a large part of what you're doing day to day, is the marketing partnership side of that time consuming?
It is, and to be honest with you, Rich, I don't spend as much time with it as I should. I should be a little bit more invested in that, but at the end of the day, there's only so much time in the day to do that. It is challenging for sure to sit down at the end of the day and send out emails, or at the beginning of the day and send out emails, and to work that side of things. But it's something that has to be done. And if I don't do it, I can't race. Right. Then everything's coming out of my own pocket, and I can't do that. So definitely time consuming, and I should get better at it. But man, I love my current marketing partners. Had a pretty major switch over to Yokohama Tire about 3 years ago. It was prior to COVID, and it's been one of the best things I've ever done, is switching over to Yokohama Tire and dealing with those people. Marketing wise, they have quickly became family, and excited for many years with Yokohama Tire.
Excellent. And Yokohama does a lot of stuff in Baja. Is that ever going to be in the plans?
Maybe. Okay. Yokohama Tire is very involved in all forms of racing. They're one of the largest sole tire manufacturers in the world. Like you have your Bridgestone or your Goodyear, but they produce other things other than tires. Yokohama only produces tires. So it sure opened the doors for me to go race a little bit of everything. They're very involved with the Travis Pastrana's series, the Nitro Rallycross. They're involved with Pikes Peak, which I actually got to go run an Ultra 4 car up, my independent Camel car up this year, which was an absolute blast.
Nice.
And as far as Baja goes, I've always been very reserved about going down to Baja. It's one of those things that it's not to say it's hard, but it is more work from somebody from Kansas to travel 20 hours across the border to do that. And of course you kind of feel like there's maybe some hidden dangers that comes with it. So I've always been very reserved. Here last year, would have been over a year ago, year and a half ago now. I had a life-changing wreck there that has ended up in ultimately a fatality on the track, and that has definitely affected me and affected my family and how we're my overall racing for sure, and how I look at it. But I definitely try not to dwell on that side of things so much, because at the end of the day, I was doing nothing wrong at the time of the accident or any time whatsoever, and I was where I was supposed to be, doing what I was supposed to be doing at that point in time. And it was just a very unfortunate accident that happened. So I don't know, Rich, that I'll ever go back. I'd like to someday, but it's definitely something that's hard to watch, is the Baja racing, knowing what happened to me down there.
And that happens. It happens a lot down there. A lot of it nobody ever hears about, or it's very, it's not. It doesn't get back over the border, you might say, with the advertising or whatever however you want to put it. But it does. Those races can be out of country like that, can be extremely dangerous because there is no control over huge distances like that of where the spectators can go and what they do. My first time down in Baja was in 2003 when they were filming Dust to Glory. And it was evening, and we were expecting the trophy trucks in any time. And we saw all these lights come through this canyon, and we've got the BFG pit set up out there and the end of this canyon. And I'm like, everybody's like, oh, here come the trophy trucks. And all of a sudden, this pickup truck comes by with a bunch of lights on it and like 10 people standing in the bed of the truck. Not 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, the first trophy truck comes through. And I'm thinking, I sure hope those guys got off that course. Because there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
and that's a very similar situation. What happened in with my accident? It was literally nothing I could do. They were there. So
yep.
It is very, very unfortunate, and I think there needs to be maybe more education with that type of racing down there. Mexico's an amazing place, but I just don't know if there's a future for me down there. And I like to stick with races that, especially here in the States, I raced in Europe for 3 years, which was a very pivotal point of my racing career as well. So I understand the racing out of country, but I learned a lot by racing out of country, and especially with marketing as well, with how hard it is to market out of country, because most of the time there's different divisions within companies that they don't cross the lines of say the US market is different than the UK market, which is different than the Spain market. So I like to stick here to racing kind of more or less in the States, because it is a lot easier to market with, because that's end of the day, my companies that sponsor me, that's what they're interested in is the US market, because that's where they sell. So I've learned a lot with marketing and doing the overseas racing. But yeah, so with going forward, I'm not against racing overseas. I love it. I've met a ton of good people that are family now, and I wouldn't change that for the world. I have some different goals nowadays, especially with having a wife and kiddos that involve racing here in the U.S. and trying to do everything taking as much as a calculated risk as possible. Right. Because at the end of the day, I still got to come home to them.
Correct. Now, your new car is a UK built car, correct?
Yeah. Yep. It was built by a company over in the UK called Off-Road Armory. I started racing overseas. I was at Glen Helen, of all places, and Dave Cole was looking for somebody to go race overseas, willing to ship their car. But the downside to it, you were going to lose racing the rest of the year out in the States. I looked at my buddy and said, dude, we should totally go do that. Let's try to be different. Let's expand. Let's try to be different. And ultimately ended up shipping my car over. Rob Butler from Off-Road Armory ended up taking me under his wing. and I'll forever be grateful for that. And we ended up racing 2 races over there, and I shipped the car back home. We ended up building the car in 2014 to race the entire European Ultra 4 Europe Championship, and I ended up winning 3 out of the 4 races over there, winning the championship, of course, with that, and ended up the next year racing it over again and selling the car. And anyways, established a really good relationship with Rob Butler at Off-Road Armory, and we ended up starting on this car in 2020 and have been building ever since. And it just landed in July of this year here in the U.S. So excited to be campaigning that car for the years to come.
And it's an IFS car?
Yeah, yep. It's very similar to say Loretta, as far as and by similar I mean as far as its layout. It is a rear engine car, independent front, solid axle rear. 2 shocks per corner. The standard Ultra 4 kind of setup at this point. And it's just Rob is very, very good at his designing, and he's very, very good at listening as well. If there's something I would have wanted done on the car, it got done. And so we accumulatively built this car, and it's gonna be a bad MF
Nice.
whenever we get everything kind of the new car blues sorted out of it. They've been waiting a long time with it, but building a car during COVID was not ideal by any means.
Yeah, not just because you couldn't travel back to help, but also securing parts.
Yeah, that was the biggest one, was securing parts. Lead times, I mean, it was terrible. So, and the traveling, we were locked down pretty much the entire time, not able to travel. So we did everything via FaceTime.
Right, that's tough.
It was tough, but we'll be seeing the rewards of that and all that work over the past couple of years. Hopefully this year.
Great. Well, you'll be ready for that. That car will be ready for KOH then.
Oh yeah. I've been working on it night and day. We had our first test session out in Johnson Valley, found a lot of stuff that we needed to change or fix on it. And so brought the car back here to the shop, and tore it down and starting to make some changes to it here and there, to ultimately be make the car more reliable and faster. So I always say a car is not a good car until the second or third season, because it just takes every car. I don't care what car you buy. You can go buy a Campbell car, you can go buy a Mason trophy truck. They're all gonna have issues and bugs, that you got to work through.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's rare that, something happens like with Raul this year with a brand new car delivered on the lake bed and be able to go out and win in it. I mean, that was amazing.
That is amazing. And that is something that Raul, I mean, that was literally like playing the lottery that day, and he won.
Yes. So then, what was your best finish at KOH?
My very best finish at King of the Hammers would be a 3rd place finish. It was in 2016, 17.
Okay.
I don't really, they all run together. I've raced it, this year will be my 12th year racing King of the Hammers. So, we've always, we've had some very good finishes within the top 10, but never have had that perfect day per se.
Right.
At King of the Hammers. It is definitely a hard race to win. And that's why very few people have won it. Very
true. Very true. So then, you're going to continue racing in the States, try different things. That rallycross stuff sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. So my goal is to diversify and do as much as I can, and maybe try different areas of motorsports to see where see where I land, and hopefully ultimately develop, keep on developing my skill set. Because I'm a firm believer in everything transfers over. You gain a little bit of seat time in something, you will store that and be able to use it at some point in time. So yeah, that Nitro Rallycross looks amazing, and I hope I can get my shot at it in the coming years.
Cool.
Pikes Peak this year was a big one for me.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. You had quite the run.
Yeah. Had quite the run. In fact, I made history. I don't know if it was necessarily in a good way or not, but I viewed it as a good way.
If you're in the history books, it's always a good way, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Race mile. I actually have a course map here in my office that I'm looking at. Probably race mile. It'd be about race mile 9, I think. If that. I slid off the course, rolled the car, and righted the car back on its wheels and tires, and finished the race.
No recovery, just peeled out.
Just peeled out and went. Rolled the car, and kept on going. I was the first car ever in the history of Pikes Peak to roll a car and finish the race. So, which is a testament to ultra 4 drivers and off-road drivers in general. That being a big deal. To on-road guys, I might as well have walked on water that day, because that is unheard of to roll a Porsche or do anything and keep on going. But to me, it really wasn't that crazy of a deal. It was like, did a quick check and kept on going. It definitely is not the first time that I've ever rolled a car, landed on its wheels, and kept going. It just happened to be at Pikes Peak that I did this, which was kind of a weird one to roll at in general. But the course was super slick and foggy that day, and there was a corner that just boom came out of nowhere, and luckily it was at lower elevation. Landed on my wheels and made it all the way to the finish line, and still outran some people, which was a surprise. But doing stuff like that is kind of my goal going forward, is to prove how diverse Ultra 4 drivers are, and there are cars. Our cars are like Swiss Army knives. They can do a little bit of everything. So I built this new car with that in mind, to be able to go do everything. It has big shocks and considerable amount of fuel on it. And so if I want to go run the Mint 400 or Pikes Peak or Crandon or whatever, we can take our cars or my card, and we can go racing. So
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to share that you can think of?
No, not really. I think we've pretty much covered everything that I would like to touch on.
Great. Excellent. So, Levi, thank you so much for having been a big part of my life over the last, I'd have to say 10 or 12 years. And that we always enjoyed when you guys would come to the races, because you would come over and sit at the trailer with us for hours and just talk. And we appreciated that. So thank you for being part of our life and sharing your life with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you for giving me a platform to be able to do so. You've given me a platform in more ways than one to express my gratitude, whether it had been on a racetrack for all those years, to doing what we're doing today, and just sitting down and being able to talk, and hopefully to give people a little bit of insight on my day-to-day, my history, and what my future looks like. So I express my gratitude enough to you and Shelly and everybody for always welcoming me and my family. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And give your wife a hug for us and kiss kids on the cheek. And we hopefully will see you here in a few months somewhere.
Yeah, there is that big race coming up that people know about, I guess, that some people know about. So we'll we should definitely connect there. I will. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, you have a good day. Thank you.
All right, you too, Rich.
Bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.